All right, so yesterday we looked a little bit at reality and living in the real reality versus a virtual reality. Showed you that picture of a fellow who was trying to just let the time go by for a little while with his big VR goggles and so forth on. Our oldest daughter works at a pet care place. They board dogs and cats, and also do grooming and that type of thing. She's very much an animal lover. And for $4, you can pay while your pet is spending the night with them. For $4 a day, you can pay to have them set up to let your pet watch a movie. And they watch the good stuff like Milo and Otis and what are some of Paw Patrol. Dog getting off on Paw Patrol, going to sleep at night. I'm not sure what's that? Madagascar, just some things like that for $4 a day. Yeah. Back in the good old days, you could rent a movie for a person cheaper than that, and through video apps and that kind of stuff, you can get it cheaper than that, but $4 a day. Even the pets need to be able to watch a movie. I can't explain it. What do you think that Solomon, the writer of Ecclesiastes, would say about all that? What's that? Meaningless. This too is vanity. I don't know. No, true fact, $4 a day. And she said sometimes they don't even watch it. They're just doing their own thing, or they fall asleep. I don't know, maybe you fall asleep in a movie too. But, so it's not just people that have problem living in reality. Sometimes pets do too, I suppose. All righty. What are your thoughts on the first 5 chapters that we went over pretty briefly here in the last 2 days? It's rich. It is rich for sure. Okay. Monday we covered chapters 1 and 2, and yesterday 3 through 5. So today we're going to be on chapter 6. I'd like for us to get through 8, but if we don't, that's okay. That's all right. We'll have some more. Tomorrow will simply be another day. This is a time that passes by so quickly anyhow. Goes by really quick. In the end of chapter 5, the Solomon the writer here is talking about how quickly wealth and fame and honor go, and then you don't remember it anymore. If you go back to just turn a few pages back toward the front of your Bible to Proverbs chapter 31. Proverbs chapter 31, 30 and 31. The words of King Lemuel, it says here, chapter 31, verse 1. Words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother had taught him. We're not really sure who this King Lemuel is, but recently in having a discussion with another fellow who likes to do Bible study and study things into the Jewish way, his conclusion is that Lemuel is kind of a derogatory term that you would call somebody, especially yourself. Maybe you would say, well, Horst, why in the world did you do that? That was just so stupid of you. That was dumb. You should... Okay? And so the idea is that these are words where it says that King Lemuel, the words his mother taught him, was Solomon after the fact saying, I wish I would have listened. My mother already told me these things, but man, I wish I would have listened. Kind of that reflection. Not that he never knew, but that he did know and didn't. And so here he is writing again here in Ecclesiastes stuff that he knew or stuff that he discovered as he had a moment to pause and to be able to think about life and all that life gives, how fleeting it is. Would you like to be great and glorious and to be able to win the Olympics? I don't know if you were keeping up with the World Cup idea or not, the World Cup soccer tournament that was taking place here on our nation's soil, various different cities. All kinds of people flocking to watch these stars play soccer. And to me, it's pretty impressive. That's some incredible cardio and running stamina to be able to run back and forth across the soccer field for that long. And you started seeing people wearing T-shirts and jerseys with names on the back that I didn't know who that was. And it's some soccer player. Oh, okay. And one of the most famous soccer players by the last name of Messi, he wanted to win. An old guy in the terms of the sport, he wanted to win, to be able to say he is a World Cup champion, to be able to win and then maybe ride off into the sunset or not have to worry about it for the next 4 years. He already has all kinds of records, but he wanted to be able to win the World Cup. And he and his team make it to the end, to the championship game, but he loses. His team loses, and he's standing there in the background, and I was in an airport flying over that time, and they had on the screens all over the place, and I was like, whoa. Oh, there's all kinds of hoopla going on about this great big, World Cup and the championship and who's winning. And every so often, the cameras would look over to this guy who's just looking on like, I missed out. And it was Messi. I missed it. If only he could have it. The New Testament talks about, the Apostle Paul says, that he does not work or run in the Christian race like somebody who is just running fruitlessly. He's running to win. And he knows that he can win and you can win and I can win. He knows that everybody who has begun this race can become a winner. It's not just one MVP. It's not just one team that gets the glory. It's all of us who continue faithfully to the end. Not like and the King James uses, a corruptible crown. We got a trophy a number of years ago for a softball tournament that I played in, and that trophy sits on a shelf and collects dust. Like, why am I even hanging on to this thing? Why did they give it to somebody else? I mean, it's just a trophy. Oh yeah, remember back. You do remember back, but we were the only one that got that trophy. But now it just simply gathers dust. And someday I'm going to get clumsier than I already am, and I'm going to knock it over and it's going to break. And then I'll throw it away. Why didn't I already throw it away? I don't know. But the fame and glory is very fleeting, and that's where we end with Solomon here at the end of chapter 5, and it ties into chapter 6, where he's still talking about the fleeting moments of wealth and fame and glory, earthly glory, and how it doesn't last very long, and then it's all gone like that vapor. It's gone, and nobody remembers. Just over the weekend, a story came out of a National Football League player who famously played for Tom Brady and two other Super Bowl quarterbacks. And life wasn't going so well. And he had become popular. He had had some winnings. But he became popular, and there were things that weren't going very well in his life, and he'd kind of washed out and tragically took his own life. I've never even seen Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, let alone play with him and for him and help to block for him. And wow. It doesn't last very long. Chapter 6. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires, yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It's a grievous evil. I made mention about Ted Turner having all the money that he could ever use plus some. And now he dies and leaves behind all of it. How much does he leave behind? He leaves all of it behind. Or that person who can't wait to get to that 65 and a half or however long that he has to get to retirement. And he gets to retirement and promptly dies. And didn't get to enjoy it. And those stories happen over and over and over. And that's not a lesson to say thou shalt not retire. It's not a lesson that says thou shalt not accumulate a savings account or a retirement plan or a 401k or something like that. It's just to recognize that all of life just, it's a vanity. It's breath, gone. It happens so quickly. And so enjoy life while you can, but especially enjoy life in and with the fear of God. Honoring God, keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of man. The something that is required. And he says, whenever I see that, this is a very grievous evil. I would want to look and say, well, what was the point? Well, you had a little bit of fun while it lasted. And in their society, you wanted to be a father and mother who were able to bear children and bring forth children. And he uses some hyperbole here. In verse 3, it says, if a man fathers 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good, and he also has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes in vanity and goes in darkness, and darkness its name is covered. As I haul around some of our older brothers and sisters, or some of those that need to go to a family reunion, and I take a whole busload of 50-some people, and that's just one busload that goes there, and they say, "Oh yeah, yep, Grandpa, there's 200 descendants that were here today." I'm like, whoa, wow, that's a lot of people. All gathered together that can take their heritage back to one couple. And Solomon said, what would be the point to have all these children? That would have been something of really high praise and glory in their culture for sure, like it is in some of our plain circles. What would it be to have all of that? But the children have turned against them, so the children don't even show up to your funeral. That's pretty much what that means. When it comes time for burial, there's not going to be there. I helped in a funeral procession over near Howard, Pennsylvania, and there were 3 buses and about 6 maxi vans that had to take the journey up over the Switchbacks Mountains down into Rebersburg to the burial site for this one lady who had passed away. There were people who had showed up because they had honored her. She was a mother and a grandmother and a great-grandmother to many, a whole big procession of us that went to the burial site. He says, what would be the point in having all the stuff, bearing forth all these children, and they don't even like you? They don't even like you so much that they give you a proper burial. He comes to the conclusion you're better off being miscarried, being stillborn. Now, maybe some of you have experienced stillborn death or miscarriages in your families somewhere. And you're like, I don't want to relive that type of an experience again. Solomon concludes that that would be better than having a great big family. They don't like you, can't get along. Do we have family spats that take place? Where families aren't on talking terms with one another? I preached the funeral service of a neighbor a number of years back, and not all of his children came. In fact, most of them did not come. One of his children that lived out on California, the mother hired a private investigator to try to track him down. It was the oldest son, just to try to track him down. They hadn't seen him in decades. Where's our oldest son? Last she knew, she was in California somewhere, paid a lot of money for a private investigator to be able to track him down. She flies out because he's not going to respond to any messages of any kind that she leaves for him. Flies out, surprises him, shows up at a coffee stand. It's like, I just want to see you. Dad's not doing so good. And he looked at her with hate in his eyes and said, how could you have married such an evil man and stayed with him? For you to marry him and to bring us into this world, how could you marry such an evil man? She had coffee and a few little bit of a dessert, and then she left and he said, I don't want to ever see you again. That's reality in our world. I hope that's not reality within our Christian circles. Maybe not hate to that degree, but unfortunately sometimes there can be a family tiff that develops over something. And it might even be something really, really big. And the idea is, I hope I never see you again. Recently, in a family spat that was going on, a brother said to his sister, you are on the short road to hell for your actions. And that was a Christian brother and sister. Solomon's conclusion to have a large family or not to have a large family, that's not the question. But to have a large family and to have it all turn against you, you're better off being stillborn. Wow. So what kind of value do you and I place on relationships? Verse 5, it has not seen the sun or known anything, yet it finds rest better than he, referring to this stillborn child. Even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good, do not all go to one place. This stillborn child, this miscarried child, as it makes mention there in verse 5, it didn't know any good, it didn't know any evil, and it's still at a better place than this man who had everything going for him, but all he knew was evil. They both go to the same place, to Sheol. They go to the place of death, and one isn't better than the other. Even if he could live 1,000 years twice, he wouldn't be better off. Verse 7, all the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has a wise man over the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wondering of the appetite. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. You have those wondering eyes looking for appetite but can't get it. You sit down for a meal and your pet dog is sitting there like going, please? I'll wag my tail 3 more times, please. And sometimes we drive down the road and we're like, oh man, the picture on that sign of how juicy that burger is wow. But then what you get is like, that? Or those who are truly hungry, just looking by, I'll never get that satisfied. We all had the opportunity anyway to receive plenty of food to eat here just within the past hour, more than enough, right? But give yourself just a couple more hours, 3 more hours, and you're going to be standing in line for food again, right? Why? Wasn't that enough? Remember, that food and that appetite is gone. A breath. Vanity. It's gone. It goes by so quickly, and yet we eat again. And those who decide that they can't wait to get to the top of the pyramid, the Bass Pro Pyramid shop out in Memphis, to be able to be at that top steakhouse, it's all the way at the top, being able to look out over 7 different states. And a group of old older fellows I had out there, this one guy, he had some money to burn. He said, I'm getting the biggest steak. And it was a nice, big, juicy steak. I said, how much did that cost? $100. $100 for a steak. Yep. Boy, it is good. And he was slurping this thing down. It looked really good too. But he was hungry before I was, just a couple hours down the road. Now maybe that's his metabolism or so forth, okay? So fine, eat a big $100 juicy steak. I don't care. But that doesn't satisfy, and Solomon knew that. He recognized it. And so if we live and work just for the next steak, just for the next meal, just for the next big event of wealth and honor to take place, it quickly goes by the wayside. Verses 10 to the end of the chapter. Whatever has come to be has already been named. And it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. The more words, the more vanity. And what is the advantage to man? For who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? For who can tell man what will be after him under the sun? Oh, there's something brand new. No, he had said earlier there is no new thing that's happening under the sun. All right? But we're often looking for something new. And now we have UFOs. Oh, they have another name for it. What's the UAPs? What's that name for it now? UAP? Yeah. So it's not. It changed from UFO to UAP. UAPs have always been around. They were just called UFOs. You just call them by another name. Well, what is that anyhow? Yeah. So what are we going to do with all these UFOs or UAPs that might be flying around? Oh, the CIA is the one that's in charge of those things, right? Oh, they're going to... Okay. And that's my answer to it. Oh, okay. So they're going to control it. Whatever. And there's all sorts of people that get themselves all worked up over something that has already been named, or they don't have a name to it. They're looking for something else in the superstition. And that owns them. And by the way, the superstition will pass. Mankind has been dealing with UFOs and all that kind of stuff for 100 years. It's nothing new. It's been around for ages. But now that we have a way to spread it a little faster, and we have a way to enhance our photos and enhance videos and using AI to be able to put things where they actually weren't to begin with, I'm not sure what they're going to do with the photo that they just took, but it wouldn't be the first time they missed somebody else, and so they just plopped them in there. Not even reality, but we can make it reality. We can get ourselves all worried about it, but this too shall pass. And what good is it if we live a long life or a short life? That life just passes like a shadow, and I don't know what's coming next. Any thoughts here on this chapter? Okay, let's go into chapter 7. The beginning of chapter 7 lists a bunch of proverbs that is given for us here, this first half. There's a bunch of proverbs that are listed, and I'd like for us to go down to be able to read down through them. And I'll have you help me read. Okay? Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Let's take turns, and I want us to read the first 13 verses, and popcorn style read them one at a time. And then we'll come back and take a look at them, okay? So just take turns, 13 of you, reading the first 13 verses of Ecclesiastes chapter 7. How many of you would like to have a good reputation? Good name? Yeah. All right, for sure. There are some whose names get spoiled. And sometimes those names get spoiled because of slander, because of things that aren't true. And guys' names name and character gets tarnished pretty quickly. There are those that get spoiled because he had it coming, okay? There are those that through fake news, and by the way, fake news showed up in the Old Testament also. It's been around as long as man. that through fake news, somebody's life is spoiled, and it's like, that's not really true. But a good name, a good reputation, it's better than the precious ointment. And there is some really precious ointments that are out there, where that person walks in, it's like, can tell that she walked in the door. Woo, I think she's wearing it. Not just a small dab either, okay? A good name is better than, a good name that goes along with you is better than just having the most precious ointment. And in the New Testament, during Jesus' time, somebody came to him and broke a very expensive box of ointment and washed the feet of Jesus, right? And the disciples were like, what? She spent all that money for just to wash his feet? Well, they turned it into a stewardship thing, and the basic reason for that is because the chief disciple, the disciple that had the chief concern about that was Judas, who was simply a thief to begin with. It doesn't have to be that whenever you walk into the door, it's like, okay, all rise, the judge has entered the court, and everybody rises. But it ought to be whenever you walk in the door, people are like, hi, it's so good to see you. Instead of, watch what he has to say, he's here now.
You need the rest of the story, that's all I'm going to say.
We'll finish and we'll find out that the Bible says, I don't want to know the rest of the story.
Oh, no.
No, that's because that's what it's... Joe, I'm glad you're here part of this class. I'm glad you're here. And for a person that has a good reputation, death is actually a sweet thing. Okay? Death is better than life. And most of us do not like to go to funerals, whether it's our own personal kin or whether it's not. Okay? We just simply don't. But death is better than life for someone who has had a good reputation, has been known as someone who's been kind, who's been honorable, a man or a woman of integrity, of generosity. Somebody that's been truthful, someone who's just nice to be around. That you can work on. And you young people especially, you're still young enough that you might say, well, yeah, but what they told about me whenever I was in 9th grade, okay, it's 9th grade stuff. And the psalmist says, remember not the sins or the indiscretions of my youth. You have plenty of time to put that 9th grade stuff aside until you become an 11th grader, 12th grader, or graduate. Okay, you have plenty of time. But choose that good name and that good reputation. The house of mourning is the end of all man, and you're going to get there sometime or another. Sorrow is better than laughter, and he comes to that conclusion because at least whenever you're sorrowful, there's no way except up. That's what it means there in verse 3. Okay? If life is a dance and you're having just everything going great, well then you're on the mountaintop experience, well that's great. Guess what? You got to come back down off the mountain sometime, right? But whenever we're in our valleys of life, none of us really signs up for that. None of us really want to say, yeah, I want to go through a tough time in life. But whenever we get there, can we have the Lord God reach down, as Psalm 3 says, hey, keep your chin up on me. He says, the psalmist says, he's the lifter up of my chin, of my head. Okay? Whenever you're in the valley, there's no place to go but up. So that's a positive experience. That's what it means there in 3. Not that any of us want to choose sorrow, but at least there's no way except for up. And the house of mirth, the comedy house. Verse 5, it's better to hear a rebuke of the wise than the song of fools. Watch out. If somebody always has everything great to say about you, watch out. Because what are they actually saying behind the door whenever you're not there? What actually is being said about you? It's better to hear a rebuke than everybody giving you the attaboys. And make sure that you're getting the attaboy, especially from our Heavenly Father. So He looks down and smiles with pleasure. Yeah, that's my daughter. That's my son. in whom I am well pleased. And he says that about you and I too, not just about his son Jesus Christ at his baptism. It's better for us to hear a rebuke. And how many of you want us to hear that? Most of us don't. I'm 51 years old, and I don't always like to have someone say, hey, can I have some word with you? I need to just tell you something here and then give me a rebuke. I don't always really like that. Does it get easier whenever you're 52 plus? But it's better for me to hear a rebuke of the wise than to have everybody else, oh, here he comes and gives all the attaboys. But most of us kind of like to be liked, don't we? And so we make our friends and we hang out with those who we like and who like us. Verse 7, oppression drives the wise into madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. All of this idea of cleaning the swamp, for whatever that means or is not. I'm not sure if you're cleaning the swamp from alligators and putting in bigger alligators or what's going on. I have no idea. Dr. Fauci's on a stand today with a Senate hearing to answer questions due to his actions during the whole COVID pandemic years, and he refuses to answer a question. And it's like, by law, you're not allowed to plead the fifth because you've already been pardoned. So you can't plead the fifth, you can't incriminate yourself on something you've already been pardoned. Answer the questions. He refuses to. Why? Because of all the bribes that he took. Millions of dollars in cash prizes that he took over those years. And that brought along oppression to many, didn't it? We had to close down schools. Churches closed down for a while. People lost jobs. People lost thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. There was oppression that was brought about by a lot for those who paid bribes. Now, I'm not saying, hey, look, I'm going to do this for you, do this for me. I'm not talking about making a business deal or making a business transaction. That can be done in good faith. That's simply good business. To offer to pay for services due is not a bribe, okay? But this bribery that goes on, and it's so prolific in our world that is around us. I talked to our son yesterday, and they're facing some challenges in the job where he is at, and one of the fellows in management for a certain division, part of his job is to make sure that the shop works and the shop runs smoothly, and to grade the employees based on how many mistakes they made or not make. And he's been working at this, and this shop just simply is not producing. There's still too many mistakes on the material that needs to go out to the job sites. And so he started grading them accordingly and giving them a lower grade. And somehow that message got up to the upper echelon, and he got removed from office, from his position, and got demoted. He says, wait a minute, I've worked for you for 18 years, and you're demoting me, moving me to another office? You told me you want me to grade the people on their performance. I'm doing what you've asked me to do. See, even a good job trying to be honest about your work still might be vanity, puff, vapor, air. If the wrong person finds out about it, you can still be removed from your office. And that man is not sure what he's going to do now. Is he going to take the lower position, or is he going to look for another? It's been what he has worked at for a long time. Verse 8, better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud that are in spirit. The end is better than the beginning. That's why most people work really hard to preserve a relationship to get to the marriage altar. And there's where you die. Things die on an altar, right? And so when two come to an altar, you die. It's one. Now it's a new thing. But the relationship began that might have been check yes or no, or however that it started out doing. Do you love me, do you not, with a flower? I don't know how it began for you or how it might begin for you in the future, those of you who are working on it or would like to work on it. That might be the beginning of things, and that might give you some nice warm and fuzzy feelings. And the end of that now comes at the marriage altar whenever you join hands and say, yes, I do, forever, for life. And now that's the end of that thing, but it's the beginning of another one, right? Until death do us part. And for those who are looking forward to welcome a small baby into this world, the end is better. It's like, wow, it's finally here. Whew. Been uncomfortable for a long enough time. I'm just so glad I can hold that little one in my arms. Yeah. But now there's a beginning. There's the end of one thing, but now a beginning of another one, right? The end is better than the beginning. In building, it's fun to plan and to write out blueprints and to do some of those drafting, to get out the drafting ruler and your eraser and your draft board and to be able to design this house the way you want it. That's actually kind of fun to do. And now with computerized software, it's easy for us to be able to put all sorts of 3D dimensions to it and other light dimensions, where it's going to be when this tree reaches this age versus this age, what kind of shadow is going to fall because of the GPS coordinates of where this house is going to. There's all kinds of fun stuff to do. But is it more fun to draw it, or is it more fun to see it finished? And now it's done. Now here's the keys, you can move in. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning. But work patiently through it until that end comes. 9, oh boy, this one gets us in trouble. Those who have a quick temper, been around some of those, not good. Not good. I don't care what your last name is, that is not the mark of the Holy Spirit. There's no sanctification in having a quick temper. Someone's soon to be angry. Well, the Bible says be angry and sin not. I know, but this being quick-tempered is not what that's talking about.
Man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires.
That does not. It does not. Oh, yeah. And you hear some of the old guys saying this. Yeah, even me. Okay. Verse 10. Man, back in the good old days, Solomon says, don't say that. Have you ever heard that statement? You know, back in the good old days, don't say the good old days were better than these. Back in the good old days, yeah, now you had to stand beside the wall so that you could talk on the phone. Or if you had one of those big 20-foot lines that my grandmother had, I could be on the phone and I could still walk because I can't hardly stand still and walk on the phone, and I could make a nice path in her carpet with all of my treks. The good old days. Really? Well, there might be some times where wouldn't it just be nostalgic to go back and live like Pa and Ma Ingalls? Wouldn't some of that be? Guess what? You can just join an Amish sect. Okay, you still can. They're still around. But the idea is, someone says that, just respond, but was it really the good old days? Was it really? Certainly there were some advantages to it, but there were plenty of disadvantages also. Protecting money, keeping money, an inheritance, what you'll do for inheritance, what you'll do to preserve life, use knowledge, use wisdom. Consider the work of God. Who can straighten what He has already made crooked? Earlier is who can make crooked what He makes straight. We found that in an earlier chapter. If God has made something straight, do you think you can make it crooked? Well, okay, I guess you can bend a twig, bend a small sapling enough and keep that bend on so that whenever you harvest that tree, it becomes the nice arched buttress of a cathedral. Because that's how they grew, that's how they built the great big grand cathedrals. The architect very rarely saw the end product because it took several hundred years to grow those saplings with a special bend so that it could be the nice arched buttresses of the great big cathedrals that you see around the world. They didn't have laminate beams and CNC routers to make it happen. In the day of prosperity, be joyful. In the day of adversity, consider God has made one as well as the other, so that man may not find anything that will be after him. If things are going prosperous, enjoy it. Okay? Enjoy it. Recognize that that came from the Lord. Just as much as whenever the stock market turns the other way and there's a number of digits that disappear on your investment portfolio, to be able to say, well, God made that happen too. God gave me breath and God gave me life here. Consider, again, going back to the theme part of Ecclesiastes from chapter 12, the very ending, the conclusion of the whole matter is fear God and keep His commandments. That's all you're supposed to do. So whether you're rich, fear God and keep His commandments. Whether you're poor, fear God and keep His commandments. Man versus woman, lots of children versus no children, married versus single. Your dream job versus not your dream job. The salary that you want versus a salary that you would just really like to have sometime. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. All right, so look at these extremes. Something that Solomon in his life, he had seen that he could not wrap his mind around. Not everything made sense. Why is it that you have a young man or a young lady in the prime of their life and something atrocious happens and they are taken to death's door? Why to a young fella? Fellow that I was driving bus with, he got a phone call from his daughter and said, hey, so-and-so died because they were running one of those electric, it's not a skateboard because it's only one wheel thingamajig, not the hoverboard, but just the one wheelie deal. And he was seeing how fast he could go, and he had gotten up to 40 mile an hour, and, well, let's just say it came to an abrupt stop because it had met maximum capacity, and it came to a stop, and he went for a tumble and died. Just a young fellow over here in the next county. Why is something like that for just a young fellow? He was just out having fun. And yet this wicked old man that had everything that he needed, he lived a long life and he had it all. I made mention about Ted Turner. As far as I know, he died without the Lord. In his middle age, in his younger and middle-aged life, he was a very wicked man. He had accumulated all kinds of stuff. Why did God let a wicked old man live so long and take out the life of a young man who was, he was just a good boy having some fun? I don't know. Find the balance between overly righteous and overly foolish or foolhardy. Why would you destroy yourself by being a fool? Why would you do something so reckless that you would want to die before your time? Back in the day, these X Games used to be a big deal. I'm not sure if they still are anymore, but they used to be a big deal. You get your fancy bike and you see how far you can ramp this deal. Kind of the old Evel Knievel of those days, okay? Why do that and die before your time? Why not just simply be wise? Because your hand is in the hand of God. It's not up to you. It's not up to me. We don't get to write into our tombstone the last day of our death. We don't get that privilege. Mr. Shepard was a fellow that lived in Georgia, not far from where I grew up. He was neighbors and landlord to a friend of ours. He had plenty of money. He had a really good job. He was single all of his life, but he was also very immoral. It was through him that my friends and I found our first pictures that we should have never been able to see. He was a rather evil man. We didn't know how evil. But he lived largely for himself. He had lots of money and he was generous with his friends. But he had determined, he had found out how much money that he had, did all the scales, and determined that he was going to die on September, I forget the date, 2025. Just last September. And that was going to be whenever all of his money had run all. And he had had a nice retirement home and then needed to go into, needed to have some other help. And that's whenever he's going to die. He's going to live it up, live it fun until that's it. His money's all. That's whenever he's going to die. Well, he's not dead yet. But his money's all. So as much as Mr. Shepard wanted to find out and order his life the way he wanted to, while he's alive, he can live it the way he wants to somewhat, but he can't determine the day of his death. Only God does that, and Solomon recognized it. Solomon could live his life the way he wanted, but find out that God is the one that puts that last date of our death on. It's easy for us to determine our date of birth. Well, maybe not you and I, because we're already here. But it's easy for us to determine the day of birth, because now we can plan for special cesareans and other operations and so forth for birth. It's easier for us to plan that than it is for death. Unless you're someone that's after the likelihood of Jack Kevorkian and assisted suicide and that sort of thing. Because our life is in the hand of the Lord. Verse 19, wisdom gives strength to the wise more than rulers to the city. Surely there's not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Sin is universal. Sin is worldwide. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. In and of ourselves we don't. And even a righteous man sometime will have his slip. And what we find in the book of Psalms is though a good man, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and though he fall, the Lord will pick him up. Solomon knew that. So this idea that, well, I have to make sure that I'm looking in my rear view mirror and the front-facing mirror all at the same time, however this is, I got to keep all of my bubble awareness so that I never sin, I never fall somewhere, no scratches ever happen to me. You're going to live pretty much a life of oppression. Trying so hard to make sure that life happens with no mistake. Verse 21 and 22, this is Joe's verse. I was talking about him whenever I came in this morning. This is Joe's verse. Joe, would you read verses 21 and 22 to us?
All right.
All right.
Also, do not take seriously all words which are spoken, so that you will not hear your servant cursing you. For you also have realized that you likewise have many times cursed others.
There you go. That's why I don't care what you said. I just don't. People go to the nth degree trying to figure out, what did they say about me? What did they say about me? Okay? Our daughter loved to play volleyball back in her high school days, and she was on a team and had a really big upset over a number 2 team in a tournament. And the announcers that were there were just, ooh and ahhing over all the play that had taken place. And she was the best player on the team at that time, and her name kept being repeated over and over again. Up for another spike, good block, and wow, what a dig, all this kind of good stuff going on. And the mistake was made later on. The coach allowed some of that replay to take place from the live, streaming whenever the girls were back at the at the hotel for the night, and there was a couple ladies that were more concerned about what people said about, why didn't they say anything about me? They never even mentioned my name at all. I played hard too. You know what? Yeah. And now you can bug people's phones. I've been told it's rather easy to do. I don't even want to bug your phone. I just don't. I'm getting what's that?
Their phones?
Yeah.
Their phones.
Yeah, I can turn your phone on and I can hear what you're saying whenever you're wherever you want to be at. That's my point. See, that's why it says that. You rolled your eyes out loud and shrug your shoulders, right?
You just open it up. It's got the highest security ever.
Oh my. Don't take to heart everything people were saying. You can worry yourself to death. I wonder what folks are saying about me. I wonder what, and relax a little bit. And maybe it happened whenever you were small and you would ask mom or dad whether you could go do something. Well, we have to talk about it. Oh boy, yeah, you know how this is going to do. And so you make sure you get to mom first or dad first, whatever the question was going to be about. If it was candy or ice cream, you went to dad first, right? Okay. And well, they talk about it. And you sit there with your ear up by the door. You know, it goes on in our life too sometimes. We feel like that we're on the outside. Maybe we're on the outside of the youth group and we're on the outside of the inner clique at school or something. I wonder what somebody is saying about me. He says, nah, don't. Because what if you're there listening for something? Oh man, they had a bigger surprise than I thought. And now I have to put on this nice, big, happy, surprised face when I'm not really surprised. Or they hear something and now, you overheard a conversation that was not meant to be overheard. And somebody was talking about how you just get under their skin a little bit. And they were just venting. And now you have to pass them in the hallway. It's like, how are you today? Okay. So the idea, I want to know. But I want to know. No, you might not want to know. Because what if they're saying things about you? He uses the word cursing, okay? What if they're cursing you? What if they're saying derogatory things about you? Recognize that you also have had moments where you were just venting off steam to somebody else and you said something that was derogatory about someone else. Maybe they're just having that moment. Don't try to figure out what everybody's saying about you. You might find out something that's not good, that's going to be more disheartening. Joe, I love you, man. I don't care what you were saying about it, but I had to call you out on it, okay? You're good with it, right?
It's fine.
All right, good deal.
You just wanted to do your class.
They
That's
told
what-
me you weren't coming. And I said, oh. They said, well, you got to teach. And then you walked through the door.
Oh, man. I wish I did have my ear to the door. I would have stayed out there a little longer.
I wasn't going to
And then I would listen in on what was going on.
I wouldn't have taught anyhow.
Okay. He came to this self-determination. You know what? In all of my life, I am going to be wise, but then found out that he had oops. Any of you have that? Man, I'll never make that mistake again. Until you do. Does that happen to you guys too? It happened to Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived. It happened to Solomon. I'm going to be wise. I'll never make that mistake again. And we do. 25, I turned my heart to know and to search out and to seek wisdom in the scheme of things and to know the wickedness of folly and the foolishness that is madness. And I find something more bitter than death. The woman whose heart is snares and nets and whose hands are fetters, and he who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. This is what's referred to in numerous times through the Proverbs as the wicked woman, the scheming woman, the woman who is laying a trap for you, the adulterous woman. Okay, the strange woman is another term that's given. Not women, okay, but someone that does not have God in her heart and in her spirit. And he says it's more bitter than death to be trapped by a woman like that. I know some men who have walked into those traps. And what the Bible says is they dig a pit that they can't come out of. Okay? And they recover from that. And I told you about Mr. Shepherd. And he did more damage to our community, to young boys that were our age, than who knows how many years till that gets recovered. Because he brought this strange woman through pictures that we didn't know until it was too late. And then what do you think we wanted to do? Hide. Just like everyone else does in sin. My brother's been running a boys' camp for a number of years down in South Carolina. Some of you may be aware of it. Some of you may have the privilege to go there for a week as a counselor for young boys to come into. And boys from 11 to 15 years old, and the percentage of those, it's almost 100% that find themselves trapped by this woman. They find themselves trapped in pornography that young. And he's like, where are you getting it from? And it's either from their own phones that don't have any oversight to it that mom or dad has given to them, or it's from the home computer or the business computer or from dad's phone. And they hate life. I wish I were dead. I feel rotten. I feel dirty. Solomon says you're going to feel like you would prefer death over being caught in the hands and the snares of the idolatrous woman who sells her body for you. You can escape her, brother. And the purity culture that came on in the 90s didn't fix it. In fact, in many places, it made some things worse. I talked to a young fellow a number of years back. He said, I need some help. And his father was in prison. His father was in prison for some immoral wickedness that he had been involved in. And he says, my dad is supposed to get out in a couple years, and I hope he doesn't because I hate him. I hate him. What he did that destroyed our family. Okay. And in talking with him a little bit more, he says, but I find out that I'm just like him. Like, really? Yeah. He said on average, he finds himself behind a computer over 3 times a day, watching things that he should not be watching. He said, I'm worse than my dad, and I hate my dad, and I hate myself. As I talked with him a little bit more, he said, I'll be glad to walk alongside of you. I'll be glad to help you. And his answer wasn't, well, wait till tomorrow, but his answer was, well, I just want to get freed from the trap that I'm in. I said, do you hate it? No, actually, I kind of like it. I said, yeah. Of course you do. While the wages of sin is death, while that is true, sin actually can be fun. But it's only temporary fun. It's not long-term fun. It's the fun that is gone. And I said, whenever you're ready to hate your sin and you really want to be free, come talk to me. I'll be glad to help you. But right now you like it too much. And as far as I know, he's still in a trap today. There is an escape. There is an escape, and it's not that you are spoiled goods if you have found yourself caught in that trap. You're not spoiled goods that you can never recover from, that you can never find victory over, that you can never live a life of freedom. That's not true. Because at the cross, He makes all things new.
Amen.
And He comes and He washes and He purges. Solomon would know something about this because he had how many wives? The next one will please me more than this one. Just wait till the next one comes along. And almost 20 years ago now, a young fellow came to me and said, I've got this issue. He was married, 4 young children. And he had married within the church, but he had an issue, he had a problem, and he was going to other countries to get it fulfilled at their brothels. I said, when are you ready to get out? Well, but my wife has changed. I mean, she doesn't look the same as she once did. I said, have you looked in the mirror? You don't look the same as you did either. I had a big dad bod on. Of course there's a change. And Solomon tried it, one woman after the next. This one will please me. This one will please me. And he had over 1,000. Did it please him? Was that the end? No, it wasn't the end. He was still looking for something more. But one thing that his soul was looking for repeatedly, and he was not able to find it. Solomon couldn't find it, but I would like to tell you, my brothers and sisters in Christ, that you and I can find it. Amen. And we have found it. He searched out for one man among 1,000, and a one woman among 1,000 that would be happily married and bonded together and find fulfillment and satisfaction and joy in living together as one for the other. And Solomon, unfortunately in his day, said he looked for 1,000 and he couldn't find one out of 1,000. I want you to know something, it exists. It does exist. And it's possible for you. And so if you're in the trap, you can escape. Okay? If you're not in the trap, don't see how close you can get to it without falling in. It doesn't work. See, this alone I have found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. This doesn't mean God did not want us to have an office job where we're sitting down. Okay, that's not what it means. But God has made us upright to seek after Him. He created us. His intention for mankind, for all of us, would be in the Garden of Eden today, right now. In the Garden of Eden still. He never planned for Genesis 3 to be a normal. He wanted us to be in the Garden of Eden with Him, to seek after Him, to have communion with Him, to walk with Him in the cool of the day, whatever that was, as Adam and Eve were able to experience it. That's what He wanted. He wanted our heart to seek after Him. And that's why there's always a longing. And when times get tough and we don't seek after Him, we might seek after work, or drugs, or sex, or money, or the next big thing. And we seek after it because there's a longing and that emptiness that God has created. But He's created us upright, wanting us to reach out and to long after Him, the longing of our heart. Solomon, this wise man, figured that out. What are your thoughts? Let's go to chapter 8. We have almost 15 minutes. I'm not sure if we'll get through all of it or not, but let's look at chapter 8. The first part of this tells us that if we want to be wise, if we want to be righteous men and women, we're going to have to somehow recognize that we need to keep the commands of a king. We need to walk after Him, and we need to walk after His ways, even if it's a king we do not like. Who are some men and women in the Bible that needed to honor a king that was not a godly king? Just list them off. Who are some young men and women in the Bible that needed to follow after the king, the commands of the king? They were faithful unto him, even though he was not a righteous king. Daniel and his friends, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah. Who else? David. After Saul. Who else? Esther. After King Ahasuerus, that poor young girl. Oh, my heart goes out to her, but she was faithful. Who else? Nehemiah. Joseph. Can we include Joseph in that? What about that nameless young girl that served Nehemiah? Okay, so I said king. Not Nehemiah, Naaman. Naaman wasn't a king, but that little girl from Israel, that's kind of all we know of her, right? What about her? There's probably more of them that we could think about. It doesn't say we have to like the king. But if he's a king, he's the guy that's all the way at the top. And I know there's all kinds of no kings protests that are happening in the streets of our nation today. We don't have a king here in the United States. I'm not sure why they're protesting that they don't want something they don't already have. They don't have it anyhow, so why are they protesting they don't get it? All right? All right, I do know what they're after. What do we do with the command of the king, whether we like it or whether we do not? Someone read for us chapter 8, verses 1 through 9. Verses 1 through 9 of Ecclesiastes 8. Okay, so what do we do with honoring the laws and the commands of our government, even if it's a government, even if it's a rule or a law that we don't agree with? Now, I want us to be careful to recognize that the apostles needed to ask questions to their leaders of their day and said, should we obey God or should we obey man? Remember that question that was coming up there in Acts? Should we obey God rather than man? And you and I are going to have to make some decisions, or we're going to have to make some just judgments. What would you do if you were brought up as neighbor to Corrie ten Boom? And you're familiar with that story of trying to hide Israelis, Jewish people, and so forth during the time of the Holocaust. What would you do? Would you obey the law of the king, of the command of the Führer, or would you say, no, I'm going to do the right thing? Please understand, there may be a time where you have to choose to deliberately disobey because of what the Bible asks us to do. Then the Bible is supreme to that of a king. Okay? Solomon isn't talking about us going against conscience or going against scriptural teaching. He's just talking about what is normative with a king. The king is the one, he's at the top of the ladder. He's at the top of the ladder. And what is it for us to say, verse 2, keep the king's command because God's oath is to him. Okay? Nebuchadnezzar, a not very good king, came to the conclusion that God is the one who puts in power who he wants to and take out who he wants to. The heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord, and he turns it wherever he wants to go like rivers of water. And so he says, this is God's oath. The king might have sworn an oath, or the president might have sworn an oath to the Constitution or to the American people or whichever nation that you're a part of. That king might have taken that type of an oath. But keep the command because it's God's oath. Don't be hasty to jump on all the news media. I wish the news media would just read this verse and be able to say, what in the world is he doing that for? He shouldn't be making that law. He's not our president. And that's happened a lot over the last 15 years, hasn't it? In fact, we can go back to 2008. We've heard that often since 2008. He's not my president. Don't be hasty to go from his presence or to his or away from him. Don't take your calls directly to him. This was a moment where if he was the last appeal that you would go to. You would go to the king for your last appeal. We have a different appeal system, so it doesn't quite fit within our civil government society that we have here in America. Okay? But be careful whenever you go and when you stand before kings. Are you going to be a man of integrity? Are you going to be a man of honesty? The word of the king is supreme. Whatever he says, it happens. And you keep the command that he has, and a wise heart will know that proper and just way of how to work out the king's command. But what if it's a bad law? Well, okay, if it's a bad law, like I said, that Corrie ten Boom had to wrestle with, and many others, by the way, if that is bad law, then you're going to have to recognize I am making a conscious decision to disobey the king. Not because I disagree with it, but I'm making a conscious decision to disobey the king because God is supreme and there's no other beyond him. The idea, and I run into this sometimes even among some Anabaptist people, I think that they might say the bag limits of how many deer we can shoot, I think that's just dumb. I should be able to shoot however many I want to. I'll make my own rules. I don't have to follow the antler restrictions. Most of you are too young to remember whenever antler restrictions first came around in Pennsylvania in the late 90s. Boy, I tell you what, the plain people about ran him out of town, ran him out of the state. You can't do that. Now we're never going to, and now they're enjoying a nice big buck in Pennsylvania because they changed the law. Some of them disobeyed those rules. Some of them today still do. I don't think that point restrictions are necessary. I'm going to disobey them. Solomon says, no, don't. Don't disobey the king's command, because when you do, then you have to hide. There's no sense in bringing more trouble on yourself for disobeying the king's command. How often are you driving down the road, and if you have Google Maps running now and Waze apps and a few other little GPS devices, and you have it actually running, it will say, hey, there's police activity up ahead. Ooh, I better slow down here. And so it alerts you ahead of time, and then I ask the question, are the police still there? Check yes or no. Thank you for helping other drivers. Okay? Whenever you obey the king, you don't have to live in any type of fear. I'm not concerned whenever a policeman shows up. In fact, there's numerous times whenever I'm at a place of work at Sheetz or at a restaurant, at a coffee shop or something like that, I'll buy the one for the fellow who's behind me. Hey, let me pick up his tab. I tried to train our son that whenever we would go to a state fair of some kind, or like the Eastern Sportsman Show, that type of thing, let's take time to stop by the Game Commission. Let's talk to them. Because I wanted our son to see them as a friend, someone not to be afraid of. Not someone, whenever you see him, you have to hide. I wanted him to honor it. I wanted him to grow up honoring it. And not someone to be afraid of when we honor the king and whenever our heart is right towards God. We don't have to have these nasty words of Nazi one towards another. Most of you are too young to remember this. But in March and April of 2000, there was an election, there was an election about to take place that year. The end of the Bill Clinton term, his last term was finishing up. And running for office was George W. Bush and the Vice President Albert Gore. And there was some boat people that were trying to escape Cuba. And on this boat was a mother and her 6-year-old little boy. The boat went down, and the 6-year-old little boy was found floating in an inner tube by some fishermen off the coast of Miami. They kindly picked him up, brought him into shore, and turned him over to the Coast Guard. Said, hey, we found him, but we didn't find any of the wreckage or anything else that was going on. And here's the coordinates of where we found him. They found 2 other survivors clinging to inner tubes also. But the boat had gone down. The boy's mother had lost her life. It eventually went to immigration authorities. There were local people there in Miami who were relatives of him. Elian Gonzalez was this little 6-year-old boy. Any of you older ones remember that name, Elian Gonzalez? their relatives said, we'll take care of him. Don't send him back to Cuba. His dad was still back in Cuba, and it became a big international nightmare. What are we going to do with this little boy? His relatives said his mother wanted him free. He should be free. His dad said, but I'm his dad. I'm his guardian. He needs to come back. And on Easter weekend, the Attorney General ordered the immigration services agencies of that day, today it would be ICE, they weren't called ICE back then, ordered ICE to come in, or that company to go in and capture this boy. And that picture made national news and worldwide news, and you can find it. Just look up Elian Gonzalez picture. It's a picture of a 6-year-old little boy hiding in the closet in one of his relatives' arms. And there's 2 masked gunmen with the immigration service pointing machine guns at him to take him captive. And the little boy's crying out in fear, afraid. Giuliani was mayor of New York City at the time, and he was running for New York senator against Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton would eventually win that Senate seat for New York. He called out all kinds of nasty words against the president, who was Democratic, and against that police force, that national force, called them words that meant they're a bunch of Nazis. He didn't use the Nazi term, but he used terms that meant that. The police and military called on Giuliani to apologize for his words. Nope, I'm not going to apologize. That should have never happened. Hillary Clinton called him to apologize. Nope, we're not going to apologize for those words. That was enough. One little boy being found because his mother was looking for freedom. That was enough to shift the vote to the Hispanic vote, to start to vote Republican, to have George W. Bush win in the fall election. And that was a very close election. Some of you might remember the 2000 hanging chads and all that kind of good stuff. And now what happens today? Somebody else is in office. Somebody else orders the same people to go in with machine guns to capture illegal immigrants and send them across. And now who's calling the ICE agents Nazis? And now who's not apologizing? That wasn't very long ago, 2000, you do the math. I remember it, and I'm not that old. Most of your parents would remember it if they were just teased just a little bit of that time. It's easy for us to criticize those who are in power, whether it's a king or whether it's our boss. It's really easy to criticize in power. And sometimes, as has been found out within our country, it depends on who's in power whether those same actions are justified or whether those same actions are criticized. And Solomon says, look, just stay out of the politics. Just stay out of that. You honor God, because the hand of the king, the heart of the king is in the hand of is in God's hand. And he turns it however he wants to. And sometimes we scratch our heads and we're like, what in the world is that president, governor, senator, whatever thinking? No, I'm not here to say that I espouse and support all the decrees and the commands and the new laws and edicts and presidential pardons and executive orders that have been written out over the last 20 years. I'm not at all here to say that I agree with all of them. But recognize that the king is in power. And Solomon tells us, let's be wise and recognize that he has power. And he ends that little section with verse 8, I've observed all these things while I've been applying my heart to figure out what's under the sun. That whenever we try to have power over someone else, it always brings about hurt. And it does. You might be an employer. You might be a supervisor. You might be a boss. That's okay. But if your idea is, because I said so, you're going to bring about hurt either to your employee or to yourself, and perhaps even both, or to the organization. Solomon wills for us to take some of his counsel, to take some of the things that he learned, and recognize that the hand of the king is just that. It's the hands of the king. Let's not fight against it. Any closing thoughts or comments? What are you finding out as you're reading through Ecclesiastes? A lot of good counsel. It's rich, it's deep. But yet it's actually pretty simple. It's really not that terribly complicated. We just step back and read it, is it? Okay. Thank you. Thank you much for your attention and your comments. Those of you who helped to read, continue to read through all of Ecclesiastes if you haven't yet. Keep reading through it. It really does not take very long at all. Listen to it. Most of you have electronic devices that will have the Bible on it that can speak it to you. It doesn't take very much time to be able to listen to the next several chapters. All right, it really doesn't. So listen to them, read it, let God speak to you through it, and let's learn together how we can be wise men and women in this world that He gave us to, because it's soon gone. Our life is not here very long, and it's soon gone. And let's live it with joy. God bless you richly.